I want to talk about gender identity and autism. Prior to my autistic transgender daughter coming out, I hadn't really given a lot of thought to gender identity. I was basically pretty ignorant about gender identity. So the last 3 years since she came out have been a steep learning curve. And I've even discovered things about my own gender identity that I'd not considered before. First, I'm going to talk more generally about the connections between autism and gender identity, and then I'll share a little bit about my own personal journey. First, I want to make clear what gender identity is and how it differs from biological sex and gender expression, because I feel like this is a concept that I had to grasp to really start to understand how to look at gender. Okay, so biological sex is basically what body we were born in. It describes our anatomy and our chromosomes. Gender is way more complicated than assigned sex. It includes gender stereotypes and cultural attitudes to behaviour, appearance and thoughts which are based on gender. I find it easiest to divide my thoughts on gender into 3 categories. First, there are gender stereotypes, which is what is expected of someone based on assumptions about their gender. Examples of gender stereotypes include expectations on clothing, hairstyles, as well as career choices, hobbies and personality traits. For example, the assumption that women are expected to be patient, compassionate and kind, and men are expected to be strong and powerful and brave. Or that some people still genuinely expect that nurses will be women and doctors will be men. I find gender stereotypes unhelpful and I reject them. But my gender identity is not connected to my rejection of gender stereotypes, which is something that people seem to really struggle with. I think that some people think that if we reject gender stereotypes, then we don't need to think about gender identity. But that's not it. Secondly, there is gender expression. This is about personal choices about how we live our life and our natural attributes. It includes things like behaviour, voice, haircut, style choices, makeup, etc. Sometimes a person's gender expression does not match up with gender stereotypes, which can be based on the sex we were assigned at birth or on our gender identity. For example, being a transgender female does not mean that you will automatically present yourself in an incredibly feminine way. You could be a masculine or androgynous transgender female, and that would be totally valid. Our gender expression does not invalidate our gender identity. Assuming that it does would be attaching gender stereotypes to gender identities, even those which fall outside of the binary. And that is such a common assumption in my experience. Finally, there is gender identity. This is about our internal feelings about whether we are male, female, both, or neither. Or a little bit of one, sometimes. Or changing gender day by day. With gender identity, anything goes. So in conclusion, gender identity is not based on gender stereotypes or gender expression. As the mother of an autistic transgender child, I was interested to read a study last year that showed that transgender or gender diverse people are 3 to 6 times more likely to be autistic than the general population. Research on the links between gender and autism are really in their infancy, and there are no conclusive ideas or reasons yet for why this might be. I don't want to speculate about this myself because I simply don't know the answers, but if you'd like to speculate in the comment section, then you should feel free to go ahead and do that because it's definitely an interesting topic. Which leads me on to a new and equally interesting topic, autigender, which can be used as a standalone gender or in combination with another gender, is the notion that one's gender experience is being influenced by the fact that you are autistic. I got this definition from LGBTA Wiki, and it goes on to describe the ways in which one's autism can impact one's gender, including the fact that gender is a social construct, and like many social constructs, it was probably decided upon by neurotypical people. And also, like many social constructs, it might not feel right or accurate for autistic people. Not everyone will feel like their gender is impacted by their autism, but for those that do, this information and description might be really useful. If this is something you'd like to explore further, I found a few articles and podcasts on the topic, and I'll leave those in the description box below, alongside the research study that I was talking about earlier. I've talked before on my channel about my experiences parenting a transgender child, but I haven't talked at all about my experiences of my own gender, mostly because my child coming out and my experiences learning about gender has taken some time. And during that time, I needed to do listening, not talking. Now I feel ready to talk about gender and my identity. As a child and a young adult, I absolutely rejected gender stereotypes, and I was definitely drawn to people who did the same. I loved artists like David Bowie, K.D. Lang and Boy George, and they showed me that I did not need to be defined by my biological sex. In addition, I come from a family of very strong women, and I was in no way given any indication that my gender would impact my expectations for my future. As a child, I refused to wear dresses and skirts. And by the time I was at university, I had shaved off my hair and I'd started wearing suits to university balls where all the other girls would wear fancy dresses and feather boas and stuff like that. I've never really worn makeup apart from for performances or if I'm filming or stuff like that. Some of this was connected to my sensory needs. Skirts, dresses, and other feminine clothing just didn't feel comfortable for me. But I also enjoyed playing with gender stereotypes and rejecting traditional femininity. Later, when I became a mother, I started to conform. My thoughts on this were around not wanting to look noticeably different in any way that could embarrass or impact my children. Having never fit in, I felt strongly that I never wanted to do anything to put them in the same position with their peers, or the parents of their peers, who could potentially judge them based on my appearance and behaviour. But it turned out I was never going to fit in, no matter how many generic female mom type clothes I tried to wear. My mask just was not that convincing. Eventually, I was diagnosed as autistic and I rejected all my masking, attempting to fit in stuff, and realised that I just needed to do me, because any other option negatively impacted my physical and mental health. But when I first heard the term non-binary, I admit I was confused. Why did this label exist, I thought? Why couldn't we all do what we wanted to do and present ourselves how we wanted to present without needing a label for it? I could understand being born in the wrong sex, but the notion of being neither, or a little bit of one, or both, was just really confusing for me, I have to admit. And eventually, I realised that this was because I didn't really feel connected with gender. I felt kind of genderless, and I kind of assumed that everyone else felt the same way. I explored this notion, wondering, do cisgender people really feel like they're assigned gender? I certainly couldn't say that I felt like a woman, even if Shania Twain was trying to tell me that I should do so. So I asked my cis friends about their experiences around gender, and I got a variety of different responses and definitions of what feeling like one's gender is. And I realised that these experiences were really individual and personal. I realised that I did not now, nor had I ever felt connected to the sex that I was born, and that perhaps my rejection of the non-binary label had been a recognition of how I feel. I had rejected it because I assumed that everyone had gone through life feeling this way. And if everyone felt this way, then why label it? Turns out that I was wrong, and this helped me to confirm that I am non-binary. So initially, I thought that I didn't need to come out or use this label. This felt like something that I could just know about myself privately, and I did this for about a year. So I didn't come out. But over time, it started to feel like perhaps it would be comfortable if this was something that people knew, and that perhaps I'd like to try different pronouns. But I needed to speak to Mr. Purple about it all first, and I was nervous. He already has a wife who is openly disabled, neurodivergent, rainbow-coloured, and just, well, not like the other cookies in the cookie jar. However, I needn't have worried because he obviously told me that he loves me, whatever, and that if this is something that I needed to do, then he fully supports me. So, I came out on Twitter and I made a video about it for TikTok. Side note, I make a lot of content on TikTok, so if you'd like a bit more Ella in your life, then feel free to follow me there at Purple Ella and Coco. Initially, I changed my pronouns to she/they. I guess this was a little gentle pronoun change for me because this felt like a lot. I was still feeling a bit embarrassed and like I didn't have permission to embrace my gender identity. But the day I came out, I felt this relief. It was like a weight that I didn't even know I'd been carrying had been lifted. Lots of the feelings of discomfort I've had about my body since puberty suddenly made sense now. I just felt more me now I'd admitted this truth. This was back in August, so I've had time to sit with it and to get used to it, and I've realised something really important. I've realised that the only person that I need permission from to embrace my gender identity is me. It doesn't matter how other people feel about it. It doesn't matter if people think that they, them pronouns are silly. What matters is how I feel. And if I feel more happy and more confident identifying as non-binary, then that has to be a good thing. I now realise that I would like to switch to they, them pronouns. The Purple family has been really trying their best to use them for me recently, and it feels really nice. So after I put this video out, I'll be changing my pronouns on all my social bios to they, them, and I ask that people use those for me. So that's it. You might not agree with me about gender identity, and that's okay. But what isn't okay is telling me what my experience should be. So please keep that comment section polite and respectful. I hope you found this video interesting. If you have, please hit the like button. And if you're not already subscribed and you'd like more content about disability, gender, service dogs, the stuff that I produce, then perhaps consider subscribing to my channel. Finally, if you'd like to support me so that I can continue working as a content creator and you have capacity to do so, then please consider joining my YouTube members club, The Purple People. The support I get from my members is part of what makes it possible for me to spend the time that I do making the work that I do for everyone. To thank The Purple People for that, I make them an exclusive monthly video. And side note, this is where you can find videos with Mr. Purple. And we also have a Discord group, which is genuinely one of the most supportive, friendly, non-judgmental spaces that I've ever had the pleasure to be a part of. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.